Welcome, everyone, one and all, to Talking with Tom and Jim.
Nice to be back.
Nice to have you back. I am the host of this thing, Jeff Greenwald. I am here with Tom and Jim Goldrup. They're film historians. They're introducing themselves to each other.
Hi, Jim.
They've written 4 books on the golden age of Hollywood, and they have traveled the world and have done crazy things, more than I can count, but just so you know why we're talking to them. So Tom and Jim, thank you for being here. And to my side is our guest host for the evening, Dylan Gregory, who knows a lot about the back end of the film industry and has worked at least with me and you guys a little bit on all kinds of different television programs and things. And so Dylan, thank you for being here as well as the guest host. And there is a reason why Dylan is here, and that is because, guys, tonight we're finally going to talk about your friend John Agar. So I will leave it to you on that one to start off. So what can you tell us about John Agar?
Okay, well, John was born back in Illinois, and when he was in the service, his dad had passed away. His mom and brothers and sister moved to California, Southern California, and when he was on leave from the being in the service, he went to see his mom and brother and sisters, and they went to a party, and at the party was David Selznick, a big film producer, and he asked John at the party, he said, "Oh, what are you planning on doing when you get out of the service?" And John said, "I don't really been thinking about it. I don't know. Have you ever thought about being an actor?" "No, I never even done a school play." "Well, when you come back, contact me. I want to give you a screen test." And so John thought he was just pulling his leg, and he went back to where he was at on the base. And 2 days later, he got a telegram or something from Selznick saying, "I'm serious. I want to give you a screen test." And so 2 months later, John was released from the service. His time was up. And he said that was one of the best days of his life. And he went in and he gave him a screen test. And he said he don't know why they took him on. He said he saw the screen test and it was one of the worst screen tests he'd ever seen. But Selznick hired him on, paid him a lot of money, a lot more than he was making when he was in the service. And he gave him lessons and all this. And
his first film was
that's because John Ford had an office on the same studio lot, and Selznick said, "Ford wants to see you."
And so his first movie was Ford Apache. He said he worked with, all of a sudden he's working with these people he grew up watching in the movies, John Wayne, Henry Fonda, Victor McLaughlin, Ward Bond, and Shirley Temple was in there. And John and Shirley Temple later married. They were married for 5 years.
Yeah. And so he went out and he did this movie, and he said the first 4 days on the set, he just sat there and watched. And then on the 4th day, Ford called him over and said, "Hey, Agar, your turn, come on." And he gave him instructions. But he said Ford always had a handkerchief or a pipe in his mouth. And he said, "Okay, John, this is what I want you to do." And go. Do you understand? And Agar said, "Yeah." He didn't want to say no. And another funny story. When John Ford first talked to John Agar, Ford asked John Agar, said, "Have you ever been in the service?" And he said, "Yeah, I was in the Air Force." And John Ford said, "Oh, you mean off we go into the Wild Blue Yonder crash?"
Yeah, and then John Agar says, "Yes." And were you in the service? And Ford says, "Yeah, he was in the
Navy.
The Navy." And Agar says, "Oh, you mean what's
Anchors Away.
Anchors Away, sink."
So they got on good, and so he did that movie, and
all these guys, John Wayne, Ward Bond,
Henry Fonda,
they all helped him.
They were really, really helpful. And then one of his next films is a film you want to see, Jeff. I'll tell you why. It was even though Westerns aren't your favorite genre, you'd want to see this Western. It was called Along the Great Divide. It starred Kirk Douglas. Douglas played the sheriff, Agar and Ray Teal were the deputies. they were bringing Walter Brennan in. He was accused of murder, and along the way also was the brother of the guy that got killed, and Walter Brennan's daughter. And it was almost 6-character story, and it was very, very good. And you know who played the daughter?
Mary Beth Hughes?
No. Virginia Mayo.
Okay. Oh, Virginia Mayo. Oh, okay. I was waiting. I almost introduced the show tonight by saying, and tonight we're going to once again bring up Mary Beth Hughes. And we didn't.
You did.
I thought it was coming, though. You're like, and guess who played the daughter? I'm like, it's going to be Mary Beth Hughes. But it was Virginia Mayo.
Yeah. And then John Agar got a contract with Universal.
Yeah.
And they put him in the first film, Revenge of the Creature.
Clint Eastwood had a little tiny bit part in that one.
And John Agar said, and from there on, everything was science fiction.
He did one Western, he said, at Universal, Star in the Dust. He said, and also Clint Eastwood was a little bit part in there. He has one line. But he did the Mole People, Tarantula. And
he was doing the Mole People, and Rock Hudson.
Yeah, Rock Hudson, who was also under contract.
Walked on the set and he said, John, what are you doing here?
Yeah, what have you got yourself into?
But Brain from Planet Eros or Eros.
Okay, yeah. Well, after he finally told him, said, "Hey, can I do anything besides science fiction?" And I'm doing regular stuff. He said, "Tony Curtis, Rock Hudson, George Nader, they're all under contract here. They're doing regular things." And they said, "We can't guarantee it." So Agar talked to his agent, and he wanted out of the contract. So he got out of the contract with Universal. And what happens? Along comes Daughter of Dr. Jekyll, the Brain of Planet Eros, Attack of the Puppet People. And in Brain of the Planet Eros, he asked the director, Nathan Duran, he said, they had a balloon for the brain. He said, "Can't we get something better?" And the director said,
I forget.
Okay, the director said, "That's all they're going to give us."
Yeah.
And Agar said, "I can't believe that today," this is back in 1990s when we saw him, today he said, there's young people out there who would prefer watching the Brain of Planet Eros instead of some of the better ones that they have these days with better special effects." But he said he thought that would be here today and gone tomorrow,
Well, that's true in the 90s. It's true now.
Yeah, very true. What quick real follow-up here, because I haven't heard any of these backstories after doing Rabbit Ears for so long. They all knew the quality of these movies, apparently, right? It sounds like Agar, at the very least, was reading the script and seeing what he had and realizing this was, schlocky is the right word, but
he said he had fun doing them.
But he always wanted to do the best he could with what was given him. And he said every time he got to go on the set, that's when he really came alive. He loved films, and he didn't do that much stage, but he loved films. And even though the Brain of Planet Eros or Attack of the Puppet People, and these, they were really low budget. Universal's at least had a higher budget, but these were really low budget, and that's what he was offered work to do. So he wanted to do the best he could with what he was offered.
So he went in.
He passed away working. I mean, John Wayne brought him back later in some of the later John Wayne movies, and he ended up working up at least until 1989 and 1998 or something like that, and he passed away in 2000 or 2001.
And he and John Wayne were really good friends, even though they didn't work together much until much later, right?
Yeah, they did 1949. They did one film together.
They did Fort Apache. He did She Wears the Yellow Ribbon with John Ford again, and then Sands of Iwo Jima.
And then 20 years later,
John Wayne brought him back. He said, but he kept in touch with him, wishing him Merry Christmas and stuff. Yeah. He said, but they were a generation apart almost. I mean,
their beliefs were different.
Yeah, their beliefs were different, and John Wayne liked playing bridge and that, and he liked playing golf. So he said, so they didn't have a lot in common, but they stayed in touch with each other. And John Wayne brought him back for 3 of his later films. So
like 20 years later, right? Like
20 years later, right?
Yeah. But going back to like his science fiction stuff, which that's got to drive you mad. Now, first of all, so I guess going even further back, you were saying like he had no acting experience, didn't know anything
Right.
about it, and was at a like a party, a family get together, and David Selznick's there and says, "Hey, why don't you come and screen test?" And suddenly he's off to the races. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
he did the test and everything. First of all, that's crazy.
It's
Um,
nuts. Yeah.
but then now he's thrown into this. He's thrown into this world, and so um, it's funny. Like the very first film he does is this John Ford movie. It's a big deal. There's all these people he respects, and then it's like, yeah, great, John. Now go do this weird science fiction stuff for a while. Like that must have driven him bonkers. I mean, I've seen these films, right?
Yeah.
And like I know we've talked about mole people, but
You didn't. We enjoyed
We
it.
liked it.
Yeah, we enjoyed it.
I called Dylan today, and he was watching the mole people. I just want to point that out.
What did you
And
think
I
of-
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
So did
I thought it was a good film.
So I did a little crash course on Agar over the last few days, and you can see him giving his all and enjoying being on there. Like I almost got a little mad at Tom Servo for riffing on him so bad. I'm like, he's doing
you're
the best
watching
he can.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was enjoyable.
The science fiction films he did at Universal at least had a budget. The ones after he left and ended up in the Brain of Planet Eros and such was on a very meager. I guess you could say it had a budget, but I don't know, not very much.
It's amazing that like he says, okay, no more of this. I like thank you. I mean respectfully and everything, but
Right.
thank you very much. But I don't want to do this forever. Goodbye. I'm letting you out of my contract. I'm turning away the money. I just can't do this anymore. And he turns the corner and it's like, here we go. Now lower budget,
Yeah.
cheesy science fiction movies. I mean, I'm laughing, but I feel really bad.
I felt sorry for him having that happen to him. He's a real nice guy. And he was a real nice guy. Real genuine, down to earth, nice guy. Yeah, John.
One thing that I remember when we were talking about him was, and I wonder if you can elaborate more on this, was his morality. Like he talked about a lot about morality in film.
Right. Yeah, he said that the old films had respect, dignity, and morality, and he said what they're offering young actors and actresses to do today with all the profanity and the nudity and all that stuff, he said he would have said pass. And now that he gets grandfather parts, he said if they offered him a part with something he didn't like because of the morals, he would have passed on it.
Should I read something real quick? I don't like reading, but
Wait.
we asked him some of his feelings on his career. He said, well, I'll tell you. One thing is being able to work with the people that I worked with. It was a tremendous privilege. One thing I feel very strongly about what we had. One thing I feel very strongly about was that we had morals and decency and respect in those days, which I think is sadly lacking in our society and films today. As a matter of fact, the kind of stuff that they ask of young actors and actresses today, I never would have gotten into the business. No way. I'd say pass. Even today, if I'm up for any particular role and they're looking for grandpas or whatever, if there's anything that is profane or lacks morals, I say pass. You can find somebody else to play the part because I won't do it. I have too much respect for myself. That's the way I feel. It's not a question of thinking that they're bad people. I'm just thinking that they're not thinking along the lines that this country was founded on. I think films, the media, television, newspapers, and magazines, and all that create a lot of society's problems by what they print and what they say. I really firmly believe that. For example, sometimes sick people are glorified on television, and you've got the other people that are sitting out there watching all this. Maybe there's a few of them whose elevator doesn't go all the way to the top, and they're going to say, hey, I'm going to get recognized too, and go out and do the same doggone thing. I think that's sad.
Well, one of the last films that John did, he told his friend, another actor named John Larch, he said, "I'm going to be playing a 90-year-old grandfather." And John Larch looked at him and said, "Don't worry about that, Agar. They got makeup. They can tone you down."